Hello, welcome back to my Sleepytime Reading channel. I'm so glad you're joining me. My first reading from the New York Times from 1851 with the Daily News Roundup from New York City seemed to go over pretty well. So we're going to keep going with that. And today is the news from New York City from the very next day, September 19th, 1851. Aaron B. Stuckey to be executed. A sketch of his life. Yesterday afternoon we visited the unfortunate Aaron B. Stuckey, who is now closely confined within the walls of the city prison, awaiting his execution under the gallows, for the murder of a Negro named Zeddy Moore. Since the Honorable Judge Edmonds decided that a new trial for Carnell was denied by the Supreme Court, it appears Stuckey has been more composed and resigned to meet his awful fate than at any previous period since his sentence. Yesterday, however, when he was informed that Carnell was not to be hung with him, he became apparently unnerved and slightly deranged, but in consequence of being assured there was yet a hope for a respite in his case from the executive of the state, he renewed his spirits and said he trusted the governor would allow him to live a short time longer. He gave us the following sketch of his life while we were in his cell. He was born of Scotch parents in the year 1809, at a little village called Connecticut Farms, situated in the county of Sussex, New Jersey. His parents were in moderate circumstances, but managed to give him a plain education, and always endeavored to keep him within the path of virtue and morality. When about 19 years of age, he commenced to learn the blacksmith's trade, in which he succeeded and continued to work at it for some 11 or 12 years. At which time he removed to this city, and entered into the butchering business, but finally embarked in the occupation of buying and selling all kinds of fish, oysters, etc., at the Essex Market in Grand Street, where he also filled the situation of market sweeper, until he left there and opened a porter-house in Anthony Street, which he kept at the time he committed the horrible deed for which he is now confined, and sentenced to pay the last debt of nature this morning, between the hours of 10 and 11 o'clock. Here the Reverend Mr. Kemp and Mr. Gilbert came in, and, wishing to be alone with the murderer, we were compelled to abandon the conversation, and left the clergyman praying with the culprit, who, it is stated, has made his peace with his Maker, and has for several nights and days past prayed and sung hymns while alone in his cell, thus preparing to meet his God, whose forgiveness he has begged and sought for many weeks and months. Stuckey has neither father nor mother living, and no relations to mourn for him, except 3 half-brothers, who, together with a large number of personal friends, visited him yesterday, and shook the culprit by the hand for the last time, as his earthly existence will undoubtedly be terminated ere the sun sets again. The gallows was erected yesterday afternoon in the rear of the city prison, and to judge from the vast number of persons who called at the sheriff's office yesterday for permits to witness the execution, the prison yard will be densely crowded during the solemn and affecting ceremonies. Doctors John A. Seidel of No. 90 Prince Street and John J. Crane of 454 Broadway have been selected by Sheriff Carnley as the attending physicians. The execution today. This forenoon is the time appointed for the execution of Aaron B. Stuckey. Henry Carnell was also to be executed, but Judge Harris having granted a stay of proceedings, the execution of his sentence has been put off. At a late hour yesterday, Sheriff Carnley received a dispatch from Governor Hunt, positively declining to grant a reprieve to Stuckey. The applications for admission to witness the execution have been very large, about 1,800, but most of the applicants were refused. This desire to obtain admission to the gallows yard is, we think, highly reprehensible, and we are glad to know that the sheriff has decided not to gratify it. Alleged attempted murder. Yesterday morning a man by the name of Thomas Higgins and his wife Sarah were arrested by Captain Maynard of the 19th Ward Police, charged with attempting to take the life of a young girl named Bridget Tolan by the administration of poison. It appears all the parties are employed as servants in the family of Mr. John Beekman, residing at the foot of 63rd Street. Owing to Bridget accusing them of dishonesty while Mr. Beekman and his family were absent, they became enraged and declared vengeance against the girl. After dinner Tuesday night, Bridget was seized with violent vomiting, and all the house were at once excited with suspicion against the accused parties, who, it is feared, managed to put arsenic or some other deadly poison in the cup from which Bridget drank her tea. The man and his wife were committed to prison by Justice Bleakley to await the result of Miss Toland's illness. In the meantime, Coroner Gear took her deposition. Serious accident to a young lady by fire. Yesterday afternoon, a young lady named Miss Margaret Downing, residing at No. 2 Pine Street, crossed over to Brooklyn with the view of making a short visit at the residence of her sister in Court Street. Upon arriving at the premises, she was induced to accompany another female to the kitchen, where a domestic was engaged in heating water over a furnace filled with live coals for the purpose of washing, and before she had been there 10 minutes, her clothes accidentally caught fire, and in a few seconds they were in a blaze, and were not extinguished until the lower extremities of her body were burned in the most shocking manner. A physician was immediately called to the aid of the unfortunate lady, who dressed her lacerated wounds, and she was then conveyed to the New York hospital and placed under the skillful treatment of Dr. Allen. Episcopal Convention. The annual convention of the Protestant Episcopal Churches of this diocese will commence its session at St. John's Church in this city on Wednesday. There is but little business of importance to come before the convention, with the exception of the election of an assistant bishop. There is much feeling existing upon this question, and we already hear the names of many prominent members of the Church presented as candidates. Those most strongly pressed are Rev. William Creighton of Westchester, Rev. J. M. Wainwright, and Rev. Dr. Seabury of this city. Since the last convention, Dr. Whitehouse has been elected Assistant Bishop of Illinois, and Dr. Williams has been elected Assistant Bishop of Connecticut, so that they will not be candidates this year. It is rumored that the friends of Dr. Williams will unite upon Rev. Dr. Kipp of Albany. The rectorate of St. Thomas's Church has become vacant by the resignation of Dr. Whitehouse. A large crowd assembled on the Battery yesterday for the purpose of witnessing the attempt of M. Malafort to blow off a portion of Diamond Reef, a large rock between the Battery and Governor's Island. There were 3 charges placed upon the reef. Each charge was enclosed in a tin canister of 15 gallons capacity and lowered down upon the surface of the rock from a boat. The charge was ignited by means of a galvanic battery contained in one of Francis's metallic lifeboats, which was moored within about 60 feet of the charge. At a signal from M. M., the charge was fired and a terrific explosion followed. Jets of water in the shape of a triangle were thrown about 60 feet in the air, presenting a novel and beautiful appearance. At the second explosion, the ascending water took the shape of a cone. The boat containing the firing apparatus was moored but a short distance from the reef, and the whole bay was covered with boats filled with persons anxious to witness this new method of removing obstructions to navigation. At low water today, an examination of the reef will be made to ascertain the effect of the explosions upon the rock. Target practice. Decidedly a favorite with our laboring citizens is the pastime of shooting at the target. From rosy morn to dewy eve, our ears are filled with the sounds from shrill fifers, rolling drums, and sonorous bassoons, leading valiant men to the demolition of inoffensive pine, paint, and putty. Fire companies, machinists, carpenters, shipbuilders, and even printers appear to be infected with the desire to burn powder and waste lead. Well, it is better to bore bull's-eyes than human carcasses, and much more safe, so we shall not quarrel with the prevailing epidemic, but rather encourage it by recording the results attained by the different organizations. The Jackson Guards, Captain R. H. Glenn, returned from Staten Island on Wednesday with a well-riddled target. Robert H. Nevin, who won the first prize of a silver goblet, drove a ball very near the inner circle, and William de Vere was within 1 of the center. Thomas Gray was the winner of the third prize. 75 muskets were in the line, beside a small brigade of invited guests and Adkins' band. The independent Turner Guards, Captain Robert B. Davis, visited Bull's Ferry the same day. At the shooting match, Edward Brennan was the winner of the first prize, Robert Barnes took the second, and George Atwater the third. Shelton's brass band headed the procession. Geographical and Statistical Society. We are gratified to learn that a movement is on foot to establish in the city of New York an American Geographical and Statistical Society. The preliminary steps were taken on Thursday, September 11th, at a meeting of a large number of the subscribers at the Geographical Rooms of Mr. Disturnell in Broadway. A chairman and secretary were duly appointed, and a resolution was adopted to the effect that the chairman appoint a committee of 5 persons to draft a constitution and bylaws for the government of the society. The committee to meet and report at an adjourned meeting to be held on the second Thursday in October at the Geographical Rooms, No. 170 Broadway, when an election will take place for permanent officers of the society. All are invited to visit the above rooms and use their influence in the advancement of this truly laudable attempt to collect and diffuse useful knowledge. Another camphene explosion. Last evening a camphene lamp exploded in the hands of Mr. Jacob Greber, a baker, at the corner of Van Dam and McDougall Streets, while filling it near another that was lighted. The fluid was scattered over his arms, his sleeves being rolled up, face and clothes, which took fire. He ran immediately into an adjoining room, and throwing himself on the bed, rolled upon it till the fire was extinguished. A medical attendant was soon at hand, and the injured parts were dressed. No other injury was sustained. Illness of N.P. Willis. Mr. W. is suffering from a severe attack of pleurisy. He is at New Bedford, where he has been passing the summer. Mr. Corcoran, the Washington banker, has made a donation of $1,700 to the Hungarians who are about to proceed to the West. The New York Colonization Society will hold a meeting this evening in Dr. Spring's Church. On Saturday, the brig Zeno sails from this port for Liberia, carrying out a large number of emigrants. A high figure. We see it stated that a lot of peaches sold in this city yesterday at $10 per basket. Rather dear fruit eating, that. Dempster, the popular vocalist, gives his 3rd ballad entertainment at the Tabernacle this evening. He will sing The May Queen with a choice selection from Scotch and English ballads. Dempster is an old favorite in this city, and will always have good audiences. The Board of Assistant Aldermen. Last night finished the allotted term of 8 sittings for the month of September. A vast number of papers have been acted upon by the board, most of them for the opening of streets, constructing of sewers, paving, etc., the expense of which will be assessed upon the owners of property in the respective localities. An additional appropriation of $25,000 was voted to the Department of Repairs and Supplies, and $1,500 was voted for the new fountain in Tompkins Square, in addition to $2,000 previously appropriated. The inhabitants of Washington Square intend to apply for an additional sum of $2,000 to be voted for that piece of ornamentation. A report which had passed the Board of Aldermen, granting to Nicholas Dean, the president of the Aqueduct Department, a bonus of $1,400 for keeping the books of the department, was thrown out in the Board of Assistants by a decisive vote. It was contended that the salary of $2,000 per annum as president was sufficient for the duties of that office. On Monday evening last, the board had a very exciting debate, or rather a waste of words, for it amounted to nothing but talk, on a motion to confirm a report to give the House of Refuge a large portion of Randall's Island. In the course of the talk, bribery and corruption was talked about, and eventually that subject was referred to a special committee. The gentleman who had talked about the bribery complained last night that for something he had said he had been assailed or assaulted by the head of a department, and wished the board to make it a question of privilege. The board declined having anything to do with the matter, and left the 2 gents to settle the matter as they could. Suicide by drowning. On Tuesday evening about 8 o'clock, a young French lady by the name of Lenore Frank, residing at 194 4th Street, left her home without being observed by any member of her family, and at once proceeded to the wharf foot of Jane Street, where she deliberately threw herself into the water for the purpose of putting an end to her existence. She struggled and cried aloud, which was heard by several citizens in West Street, who quickly hastened to her assistance, and found her almost dead with exhaustion. They finally extricated the unfortunate female from her perilous situation, and conveyed her to the 9th Ward Police Station in a carriage, where the attendance of a physician was immediately procured, and all the necessary remedies were applied to her body, but they proved of no avail, and she expired at 9 o'clock the same night. Coroner Greer held an inquest on Wednesday on the body of the deceased, and the jury rendered a verdict in accordance with the facts as above stated. The deceased was born in France, 22 years of age, and the cause assigned by her relatives for her committing the rash act appears to have been temporary insanity. Oyez and Terminer. Wednesday, before Chief Justice Edmonds and Aldermen Kelly and Chapman, in re Michael Mulvey, charged with murder. Mr. A. Phillips, counsel for the prisoner, applied to the court to postpone the trial, which stood for this day. Mr. P. said he was too unwell to proceed. Mr. Blunt, district attorney, said that as a principal witness was absent and sick, the prosecution could not proceed this day. The Chief Justice said it would be well for the public prosecutor to have 2 cases ready in case one should go off. Mr. Blunt said he was ready in the case of John D. Brown, charged with the murder of the policeman Gillespie on the 3rd count of the indictment as aiding and abetting. In his, Mr. Blunt's, opinion, after the evidence taken in the trial of Clark on Tuesday, it would be unsafe for a jury to find a verdict of guilty of murder, and Brown could not be tried on any lesser grade except assault and battery on that indictment. Hon. R. H. Morris, who had defended Clark the day previous, said he had consulted with the prisoner and advised him to plead guilty to assault and battery. Chief Justice Edmonds: why, assault and battery on an officer in discharge of his duty would be felony. Mr. Morris said he did not mean that. He only pled guilty to assault and battery. The district attorney intimated that the assault by Brown would not be of that grade of offense alluded to by the court, and added that he thought he was acting in the discharge of his duty in accepting the plea of assault and battery. Mr. Morris said that it was due to his client to state that he had nothing to do with the previous fracas which led to the riot in Oliver Street, that he was coming out of his own house, and the first thing he knew was the salute from a club. He, Mr. M., had portrayed to his client the danger he was in from the excited state of the public mind, and, under his, Mr. M.'s, advice, he, Brown, had consented to plead guilty. The district attorney said that it would be proper to state that the testimony of Michael Wogan, which was not procured yesterday, went to prove that after the death of Gillespie, Wogan had said, pointing to the body, to Clark, "There are your deeds of last night," to which Clark replied, "It can't be helped now, but it was Brown who brought the rung and gave it to me." After a few further observations, Brown was, in the usual way, called up for judgment, and in answer to the clerk's question said, "I've nothing to say more than that I'm innocent." Chief Justice: Brown, the whole evidence shows you are not innocent. You are both quarrelsome and drunk, and the death of a valuable police officer will lie at your door, and probably the death of your comrade who was tried yesterday. 2 lives, therefore, may be said to be sacrificed to your misconduct. The court see no reason at all for any mitigation of your punishment, and you are sentenced to 1 year's imprisonment in the penitentiary. The prisoner was then removed. Payment of witnesses. 6 of the witnesses, all seafaring men, in the case of the People v. Clark and Brown, indicted for murder, have been in confinement since the 10th of July in order to secure their testimony for the people. On motion of the district attorney, the court ordered them to be compensated as follows: Plumley, who had been second mate of a vessel, at $20 per month, $75. Palmer, Sweeney, Donnelly, and Sutton, seamen, $40 each. Galloway nothing, as the district attorney did not think he told the truth. The court then adjourned till Thursday. Thursday, before Judge Edmonds and Aldermen Kelly and Chapman, in the case of Michael Mulvey, the district attorney said his witness was still sick, and therefore the case must perforce be put off until Monday. In the case of Angelo Squarza, the district attorney said he was ready in this case if his witnesses were in court, but on calling the list only one answered, and attachments were granted against all the absentees returnable on Monday. Judge Edmonds said that as he would be fully engaged with the special term of the Supreme Court on Saturday, it would not be worthwhile to take up any new trial before Monday. The court then adjourned to Monday. Circuit Court before Judge King. Anna J. Barrett v. E. A. Marshall. This was an action to recover $150. being the amount of 3 weeks' salary of the plaintiff as an actress at the Broadway Theater in February 1850. On the part of the defense, it was set up that the lady was unable to perform in consequence of an indulgence in strong drinks, which disgusted the audience, and many people left the theater, and on this account the manager had refused to pay her claim. Several witnesses were examined to prove the facts set up by the defense, and the case went to the jury, but after a consultation of several hours' duration, the jury were unable to agree on a verdict and were discharged. Marine Court before Judge Lynch. Important to Masters of Vessels, James Hunter, Jr. versus Samuel P. Savage and Samuel Church. This was an action tried last week before the judge to recover damages for ill treatment of the plaintiff while on board the ship Kalamazoo from Liverpool to New York in the capacity of surgeon. The defendants are master and mate, and it was in proof that they had put the doctor in irons and confined him closely to his stateroom from the 6th of August to the 4th of September. The defense set up was that the doctor was very irritable in his manner and had given offense to the officers of the ship. This Thursday morning the judge gave his decision, awarding the plaintiff $400 as damages. 2 other cases were tried last week against the same defendants, in which the plaintiffs were passengers in the ship, and one recovered $200 and the other $10. Police. Arrest of counterfeiters. Officer Darrow of the 7th Ward Police arrested 2 fellows yesterday by the names of Francis Freeman and George Post, while in the act of passing 2 base counterfeit bank bills at the bar of Henry S. Strickland's porterhouse at No. 567 Grand Street. They were conveyed to the Essex Market Police Court and committed for examination by Justice Mountfort. Robbing a hardware store. At a late hour on Wednesday night, the extensive hardware store of Messrs. S. N. and O. Berrien at No. 601 Broadway was burglariously entered and robbed of a quantity of fine cutlery valued at $100 and $18 in cash, with which the daring thieves escaped, and as yet no arrest has been made. Arrest of a burglar. Officer Hamblin of the 3rd Ward Police arrested a young man yesterday by the name of John Thompson, charged with forcing an entrance into the cabin of a schooner lying at the foot of Fulton Street, and stealing therefrom a large quantity of wearing apparel belonging to the captain and pilot. The accused was conveyed to the Tombs and committed to answer by Judge Lathrop. And that's the end of the New York City News Roundup from the New York Times of September 19th, 1851. That was just a little taste of the court proceedings. There are some more extensive trial reports coming up in the next couple of days of news or episodes of this series of New York Times reports. Those murder trials of Mr. Mulvey and Mr. Squarza will be told in detail in the next couple of episodes. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. Leave me any comments if you have any remarks, requests, advice, and if you like what I'm doing, please hit that subscribe button. I'll be back with more Sleepytime Reading very soon. Bye-bye.